Hey guys, welcome back to the Japan Archives. We did take an impromptu week off. Unfortunately, mine and Heather's schedules just didn't line up last week, did they? We just couldn't find the time to record.
No, it was one of those things like, oh, I'm free. Oh, you know what? This thing came up and I've got to take care of it. Okay, I'm free. Well, you know what? Actually, that thing that I had to take care of the other day that also came up too. It was like tag team. Like
Yeah,
one
it
one of
really
us
was.
one of us was good, one of us wasn't.
Anyway, now that we are back in sync, how is everything going for you?
I'm going to keep it light and say that there's a lot of
Okay.
good things going on. In spite, I do have to give the disclaimer, in spite of everything that is also happening, there are good things as well. So there's light at well, not the end of the tunnel. I don't think I know the end of the tunnel, but doing good. How about yourself?
I'm glad. Kind of sad you didn't give a weather report, but anyway.
Oh my gosh, I'm ready.
No, it's too late now.
Oh,
Too late. We're moving on. No
I'm
weather
so
report
sad.
this week. I'm doing well. It's going to be a bit busy for me next few weeks with like work and maybe moving closer to Tokyo, which is exciting. But yeah, apart from that, no real changes, if I'm honest. Just going to be a busy few weeks while I get some life changes going.
Yeah, so if we have an unexpected break, it is because of some things in the air. So don't worry, we're okay. Just, we'll try to keep you guys updated, but just in case, forewarning you.
So today I found a little, I'm unsure if you call it a folk tale. I'm not kind of sure what kind of tale I call it, but it's about Japanese fans. A little tale about Japanese fans. So again, it's from quite an old book, so we have the fun of being able to just read it as it is. We don't have to make any changes or edit it. So I will be reading the story for you today, and this is called The Love of Asagao. According to the book, the following story can be found in the book known as The Diary of the Convolvulus. When I read that, I had no idea what that word meant, so I had to have a check. That word, which I will not say again because it's too difficult, is the name for the morning glory flower.
Ah, Asagora.
And the morning glory flower in Japanese is called the Asagao. So the love of the Asagao is a story about Japanese fans, two lovers, as well as the morning glory flower. Now, without much further ado, I'll jump into the story.
I'm ready.
We start here. Komagawa Miyagi, a retainer of one of the daimyos, came to the suburb of Kyoto. As it happened to be a warm summer evening, he hired a boat, and forgetting all his worries, he watched many bright-robed little ladies catching fireflies. In the air and on the grass, these bright insects shone, so that the laughing ladies had many opportunities of catching these living jewels and placing them for a moment in their hair, upon poised fingers, or against a silk flower on their kimonos. While Komagawa watched this pretty scene, he saw that one of the ladies was in difficulty with her boat, and so at once he came to her assistance, and there he then fell desperately in love with her. They lingered together in a cool recess on the river, and no longer troubled about fireflies, for both were eager to express their love. In order to pledge their vows, these two lovers, according to the ancient custom, exchanged fans. On Miyuki's fan, there was a painting of a morning glory. Komagawa wrote a poem about this lovely flower upon his own fan before presenting it to the woman that he now loved. So it was that their fans and their vows were exchanged, and the morning glory, in picture and in verse, became the pledge of their troth. Eventually, the lovers separated to meet again a few days later at Akasha, where it chanced that their ships touched one another again. When they had exchanged many a fair and loving word, they returned to their respective homes. When Miyuki returned home, radiant with thoughts of her true love, she discovered that her parents had already arranged a marriage for her with someone the poor little woman had never seen. Miyuki heard this piece of news with an aching heart. She knew that children must obey their parents, and when she was lying down on her futon, she did her utmost to comply with her parents' wish. But the struggle proved useless, for the form of her lover kept on coming back to her, and the river and the gleaming fireflies also. So she arose, crept out of the house, and walked towards a certain town, hoping to find Komagawa, only to discover on her arrival that he had departed and no one knew where he had left. This bitter disappointment much affected Miyuki, and she wept for many days. Her salt tears flowed so persistently that she soon became quite blind, as helpless a creature as a bird without feathers or a fish without its fins. Miyuki, after she had given way to grief for some time, discovered that if she did not wish to starve, she must do something to earn a living. She made up her mind to make use of her excellent voice and to sing in the streets or inside the tea houses. Her voice, combined with her beautiful and pathetic face, won instant recognition. People wept over her plaintive singing without knowing why. She loved to sing the little poem about the morning glory Komagawa had written on his fan, so the people who heard her began to call her Asagao. The blind maiden was led from place to place by her friend Asaka till someone killed her, and Asagao was left once more alone to tap out her dark journeys without a loving hand to guide her. There was only one thought that consoled her, and that was that she might, in her wanderings, eventually meet her lover once more. When a few years had passed by, it chanced that Komagawa, accompanied by Iwashiro Takita, was sent on business by his daimyo. While on their journey, they happened to enter a certain tea house. Iwashiro Takita was sullen and morose, and sat in gloomy silence, not deigning to notice his surroundings. Komagawa, however, looked about him and saw on a screen the very poem he had written about the morning glory, the poem he had so lovingly inscribed for Asagao. While pondering the matter in his mind, the master of the tea house entered into the apartment. Komagawa questioned him concerning this little love poem, and the master of the tea house told the following story. "It is a very sad story," said he. "The poem was sung by a poor blind lady. She ran away from her home because she could not marry the man her parents had chosen for her. She was unable to consent to the union because she already had a lover, and this lover she sought up and down the country, ever singing this little poem about the morning glory, in the hope that some day she might have the good fortune to meet him. Honorable sir, at this very moment she is in my tea garden." Komagawa could scarcely conceal his joy when he requested that the master of the tea house would bring him the blind woman. In another moment, Asagao stood before him. He saw in her delicate face an added beauty, the beauty of a hope, of a love kept bright and clear through the long, sorrowful years of waiting. Asagao touched the shamisen, and very gently she sang. Komagawa listened intently to this, longing to speak, longing to reveal his love, yet keeping silent because his ill-bred companion still remained in the room. He watched her dark eyes fixed upon him, but they were without expression, for they could not see. Still the shamisen tinkled, and still the voice sounded sweet and low and unspeakably pathetic in the apartment. With an aching heart and without a word of love, he dismissed her with the usual fee. She walked out of the room as if conscious of a new acute sorrow. There was something in her patron's voice that was extremely tender, something that moved her deeply, and it made her heart ache and yearn without knowing why. The next day, Komogawa gave the master of the tea house a fan, saying, "Give this fan and money to Asagao. She will understand." With these words, Komogawa and his companion proceeded on their journey. When Asagao had received the fan, she felt it eagerly with her small white fingers. "Who has given me this fan and all of this money?" she inquired. "Oh, tell me what the fan is like. Has it a drawing of a morning glory?" The master of the tea house looked at her gently. "It is the man who you sang to last night who has given you this fan," he said. "And yes, there is a drawing of the morning glory upon it." And so Asagao gave a cry of joy. "Last night," she said softly, "I was with my lover again. And now—" "And now?" At this very moment, a servant from Asagao's old home arrived, asserting that he had been sent by her parents to bring her back again. But Asagao, true to her old love, determined to fight down all opposition. Now it happened that the master of this tea house had once been employed by Asagao's father. He had committed a great wrong in that capacity, a wrong worthy of death. But Asagawa's father, he had dismissed him with money, which had enabled the wrongdoer to set up in business for himself. During this crisis, the master of the tea house thought over the kindness that had been shown to him, and resolved to commit seppuku in order that his old master's child might receive her sight again by means of this brave man's liver. So the master of the tea house killed himself, and Asagao did receive her sight. That very night, though there was a fierce tempest raging, she set out in search of her lover, accompanied by a faithful little band of servants. All night the maiden journeyed over rough and rugged roads. She scarcely noticed the heavy rain or her bleeding feet. She was urged on by a joyous love, by the fond hope of finding her lover again. As she climbed a mountain, now bathed in sunlight, she fancied she heard a voice calling her name. She looked about her and discovered Komogawa. Peace came to her then. All the weariness of long search and almost endless waiting were over forever, and in a little while the lovers were married. The morning glory is a flower that only blooms for a few hours, but Asagao's love had the beauty of the morning glory combined with the strength and long life of the pine. In their happy union, they had remained true to the pledge of love upon their fans, and out of blindness and much suffering, Asagao could hold up her fair head to the dew and sunshine of her lover's sheltering arm. And that is the story of the love of Asagao.
I was expecting a more tragic ending, so to get a happy ending is quite almost completely happy ending. I have some questions for you. Liver, why the liver? What was the liver about?
Why take out the liver?
Uh huh.
So, a footnote for this story does luckily enlighten us about the liver. It says that the liver, both within an animal and inside of a man, was supposed to have had remarkable medicinal properties, and it frequently is seen within Japanese legends. And due to its frequent appearance and its remarkable medicinal properties in folklore, it was often used to portray the need for a miraculous cure in a story.
Okay. I'm quite sad that he died. It sounded like he helped Asagao to make a living for herself, and he helped to kind of protect her so that she was able to live away from her family. So he did
Hmm.
so much for her and then killed himself for her, and it's very meaningful but very sad. Also, I had like you mentioned pathetic a few times, and I'm wondering if
I did.
that.
That seems very harsh, but then again, I will say this story in question comes from 1913.
Hmm.
So again, a different use, like we said it when we've read from Lafcadio Hearn, I
Hmm.
suppose, the different usage of words and how their meaning changes over time.
Hmm.
But no, sorry, go on. I am interrupting.
No, no, actually that brings up a really good point. Yeah, 1913, some of the words that they used, yeah, might have a little bit different meaning that has evolved in 107 years, I guess.
True. I want to believe that the use of pathetic was just trying to highlight that the sadness her face was showing. Like it was a sad face, not pathetic.
It seems like it's a like somehow like the pathetic beauty as opposed to like pathetic like sad, like more of like a strangely positive in a way, which is really strange to
Hmm.
say from looking at it now from 2020. But also I'm wondering if perhaps the word in the original Japanese was something a little different and it was translated
Hmm,
into
true.
pathetic, because there are some Japanese words that don't always have a complete English translation that have a different sort of meaning. So I'd be curious to see what that word would be in Japanese.
Yes, I wish I did have the original Japanese for this, but unfortunately not. I do, however, and I didn't read this at the start of the story, I wanted to wait until the end. I do have the poem that he wrote on the fan in
Oh,
English.
yes, please.
So the poem that he wrote went as follows: The morning glory her leaves and bells has bound my bucket handle round. I would not break the bands of those soft hands. The bucket and the well to her I left. Lend me some water, for I come bereft.
Wow, that's a love poem? I would love to hear this in Japanese. We're going to have to find the original Japanese. That seems like something I might have to do a search for in the library. It's a beautiful poem. I definitely want to hear it in the original Japanese.
I mean, like you said, it is beautiful, but as to its meaning as a love poem, maybe I'm missing it. Maybe some of the listeners see it.
I mean, I guess I would not break the bands of those soft hands. Maybe that seems rather descriptive. The bucket and the well to her I left. I feel like I'm perhaps maybe missing something. Maybe perhaps because he had to leave her for a while. He had to part. So he left his bucket, which I guess maybe his heart or his love or even the fan, I guess, and left that with her. So he's going to eventually come back to her. And since he left the well to her, which is the well where the water is, he's coming back to her to get some of the water that he left behind.
I do think in the poem he is comparing her to the morning glory. So going on with your additional thought about the well water, maybe he's saying, this is my gift to you. Hold on to it so that you can survive until I return. Because like the flower would need the
Hmm.
water to survive. And if you think about that, that is very much what happens in the
Mm.
story. Like she holds on to that love and that belief until finally they do get to be reunited.
And I'm assuming for many years he was bereft and lonely. And I'm assuming he had to travel for the daimyo, so his life maybe perhaps wasn't his own.
Well, it's interesting that there is no real mention of like why he disappeared, which would seem strange in that, and there seems to be no hint that he was trying to find her.
Do we know like about when this story was written? Perhaps there may have been some wars or fighting, so he had to go leave to help fight, perhaps?
Now, from the little I could find online, this tale was first published back in 1811, and it was called the Asagao Nikki, so the Diary of the Morning Glory. It has been adapted into like different types of Japanese plays, and in some of the plays, the name of the man can also changes at times. Sometimes it's not Kamogawa. But even reading into the synopsis of one of the versions of the play, it doesn't actually say why he had to depart. It's very much like the story in that when she finally goes to see him again, she finds that he's already departed. So it, again, does not give any reason as to why. But like you said, if he is serving one of the daimyos, he probably did have other tasks to attend to.
Yeah, it's a good possibility. Also, this is only 1811. This is relatively new.
Relatively new.
And you said it's been put into plays and like puppet shows and things?
It has been done as kabuki plays,
Ah.
but they were derived from earlier puppet theater versions, which
Hmm.
I think in Japanese is the bunraku performances. So it started off as puppet shows and then was adapted to actors and actresses on stage. But did you enjoy the story then today?
I really did. That was, I'm a sucker for a happy ending. So for to get a happy ending story, even though it did have a small minor sad thing in it, was really nice to get the two lovers that are reunited and live happily together. And she didn't get like killed or die from starvation and become a ghost. I mean, that's also that type of story has its place too. But right now, a nice good love story. That's
With an
wonderful.
actual happy ending.
With an
Yeah,
actual
exactly.
happy ending. Yeah, I liked it. Thank you. I'm glad you found that.
It's okay.
And it's nice to get a different flower imagery because usually we have, cherry blossoms, but to get the morning glory is because I think there's morning glories are depicted in like for yukata patterns or I think some kimono, but mostly yukata or like origami paper. So the morning glory design is in quite a few things, but it doesn't seem to be mentioned as much as, things like cherry blossoms. So it's nice to have a morning glory story.
Well, you're welcome. I suppose with my part of today's episode out the way, it's over to you. And I'm kind of hoping that we're going to hear some Senryū today.
Your wishes are going to be fulfilled because we are going to
Ooh.
start an exploration into Senryū, or Japanese satirical verses. And I think I mentioned this last week that this book comes courtesy to me of a birthday gift from a dear friend who is currently talking with me at the moment. And again, thank you so much for this lovely, wonderful gift. I think I screamed really loudly when I opened the package. And this book is from translated by R.H. Blythe. And this book itself, it's a first edition. And it was published 1949. And it was published by the Hokuseido Press, which is in Chiyodoku, Tokyo. So this book was actually published itself in 1949. So it's got beautiful artwork, lovely illustrations, funny illustrations at some point. So what I want to do, though, is I'm going to read. We talked briefly about Senryū way long ago, Mugashi
Oh,
Mugashi.
yeah. I do remember you wanted to do like an episode dedicated to it.
I'm going to read a little bit from the introduction first before I do the Senryū that I chose. So, from the introduction, it says Senryū are expressions of moments of vision into not the nature of things, but the nature of man. And again, historical context in 1949, humankind was called man or mankind. So it is referring to all people, but 1949, they were going to use man. So disclaimer there. Haiku are the brief waves in the life of things, the spots of time that we come across in our reading of poetry. Senryū are those excruciating moments of novels. Some indeed are novelettes in 17 syllables.
So, a Senryu follow the same pattern as a haiku in syllable wise? It's still a 575 poem, or it can change?
I've really only started into this, so I'm going to come back to you on that because I feel like some of them can change, but they might have the same syllable count. So let me put that briefly on pause. It's a great question. We'll come back to it because I want to spend some time in Senryū. There's so many in this book. But the interesting thing, like haiku versus Senryū, usually you do have some kind of nature in the poem, but Senryū don't follow that. And they can mention nature, but they don't have to, whereas in haiku, it's part of the poem itself.
And who invented Senryu? Or did you mention it once before when we did Senryu?
The term came from Kurai Senryū, who lived from 1718 to 1790. So we did briefly mention that in the Cherry Blossom, episode 42A, A Passion for Cherry Blossoms.
Okay.
Oh no, both share the same 575. So yes, way back when I did write that down. So do I remember? No, but that's okay. But that's why I'm glad we have show notes so I can go back and review. There's one more sentence I do want to read that I quite enjoyed. So, Senryū, however, is colloquial par excellence, for it is the literature of the unliterary, the poetry of the bourgeoisie.
Poetry of the bourgeoisie. Interesting.
Ideal, like haiku, very kind of high and learned, but Senryū are approachable by everyone because it's telling the story of us, of our life. Little things, humorous things, sometimes bawdy things, sometimes frustrating things or happy things. So they tell a lot of story, we get a lot of information about Japanese culture from them, from like, haiku and things. We get a lot of beauty and aesthetics and, some more deep thoughts into the human mind, the heart, and the psyche. But Senryū sometimes just, we're going to explore quite a few of them, just our complaints about either wives or husbands or mother-in-laws or children. So sometimes they're just getting out, venting in frustration, or something they might find humorous. So the poem I'm going to read today, now the fun thing about Senryū is that there are a lot of anonymous ones. Unfortunately, I did pick an anonymous one. I don't know who wrote it. I don't know where it came from. I don't know how old it is, but I feel like, Thomas, you might appreciate this one. So if you're ready, I'll go ahead and read it.
I am ready.
ボードに向こうと先生あくびをし. I know you can hear, a couple of those words at least, probably more.
Sensei would be the Japanese equivalent of teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Ni is a particle used for direction.
How about ボード?
ボルド.
ボードに Mukoto sensei, akubi oshi.
As in literally bored.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm actually reading katakana. Yeah, blackboard.
so so we're in a school setting
We are in a school setting, yes.
and there's a blackboard with the teacher.
Yes,
Akubi hoshi. Or kubi is neck, no? So what's akubi?
akubi. Akubi.
Those bits I'm not sure about. I'm surprised I figured out that we're in a school, if I'm honest. So I'm doing kind of well.
You're doing fantastically great because I don't know half these words either. That's why I have the translation in front of me, which says, when the teacher turns to the blackboard, he yawns. So I've got a little note here that I quite love. I love this little note. The teacher, like the clergyman, has to keep up appearances and hide his boredom. Otherwise, he can hardly scold the pupils for their inattention and drowsiness.
I understand that completely.
It's like a bet. So essentially, it's the teacher hiding how exhausted he is because Japanese teachers, Japanese teachers work long hours, sometimes 6 days a week. They get there early, they stay late.
Do at my school, six
They
days
do.
a week.
Yeah. Do your teachers do clubs too?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about you, but my time in schools, there were a lot of teachers who were really tired and sometimes would have short naps because they were so exhausted and having to do so many things and have to stay so late. Like Japanese teachers work really hard. They really do.
It's very commendable. I'll say that.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into teaching. So it's no wonder that this poem, which was published in 1949, I don't know how old it is, but I'm assuming since it's got a blackboard in it, not that old of a poem, that teachers even back then were exhausted trying to do their work and trying not to show their pupils that they were exhausted because then they couldn't, yell at that pupil for falling asleep in class for the students who were also working hard and going to cram school and clubs. A lot of tired people.
A lot of tired people for sure.
So what do you think?
Well, like you said, Senryū is a bit more about the mundane and the actual problems and more in like a jokey way. I suppose this one didn't really have the satirical bit to it, but it is very more, it's not like the old haiku, which are very romanticized. This one's very much like, here's a problem that everyone can relate to.
Like a snapshot.
So it's interesting to hear such a different type of poem, even if it's still following the 575. Like they've managed to completely turn it on its head.
I thought you would feel some appreciation toward that and some understanding toward that poem.
I was asleep yesterday at my desk.
No judgment. No judgment. Yeah, so that's my Senryū for today. We'll visit one again probably next week, unless I change my mind. But at this point, I'm still aiming towards Senryū, and I haven't picked which one yet because I am really enjoying reading this book. And I put it down, I pick it up, put it down, pick it up. So we'll see what I go with next week.
Cool. Well, I look forward to hearing whatever you pick.
Absolutely. And if you let me know the story ahead of time, I'll see if I can pick a theme.
Well, Heather, thank you for the poem. Is it time for us to sign out this week?
I think it is. I don't have anything else. I mean, I can get another Senryū if you want, but I think we should end it now.
I'll wait expectantly until next week. So thank you guys for tuning in this week. I suppose you did get a book recommendation from Heather this time.
Oh, yeah.
The Senryū book.
I do recommend it.
Whether you can get your hands on it, maybe a different story, is very old and out of print. As for next week, well, we've had the last 2 episodes were more folktale-y type things. So I want to start a new series that we come back to every now and then. A bit like we've been with Shinto, we come back now and then and do the next part of the story. I want to, because I think we talked about it quite recently actually, we haven't actually really done the lives of any of the emperors of Japan yet. And so, in line with following the Shinto stories every few weeks, I want to start with the first emperor, Emperor Jimmu, and then after that, slowly, eventually, we'll start working through the emperors reign by reign. So next week, I want to go to the first emperor, so it'll go back to a more historical type episode. I say that, although in theory, most of the stuff about him is legendary, but you know what I'm on about. You get what I'm going for.
History adjacent.
So that's my plan for next week. Yeah, so that's my plan for next week. I hope it's enjoyable. And yeah, that's everything from Me? What about you, Heather?
I'm looking forward to next week. I'm really looking forward to the historical tellings. And yeah, I think that's all for me at this moment.
Okay, cool. Well, guys, thanks again for tuning in this week. You can find the show notes up on our website, japanarchivespodcast.com. There you can also find a database we're slowly working on, which is connected to our show notes, but also other things we find out about Japan during our research. If you want to follow us on social media, when I can remember to update it, that is Twitter and Facebook over at Japan Archives. And if you want to see some of our explorations of Japan, you can follow my Instagram at nexus_travels, NEXUS_travels. And I think that's pretty much it, no?
I think so.
For the outro?
I think.
We always forget something.
We forget
but,
something.
You know, I'm sure our listeners are used to our forgetfulness by now, so I'm sure it's fine. But yes, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in this week. Thank you for your patience. We know it's been 2 weeks since the last episode. But yeah. Thank you so much, and we'll speak to you next week. またね。
皆さん気をつけて。またね。